Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Priyanka. I'm your new course anchor. I'm a qualified lawyer from India, and I've pursued my master's from Queen Mary University of London with a specialization in commercial and corporate laws. So it's a pleasure to welcome all of you and see these numbers for our concept class today on payments and payment obligation and breach of contract, which will be hosted by our very capable Nishvita. So, Nishvita, the stage is yours now.
Shall we wait for another minute?
Yeah, sure, no
Okay.
problem. I think there are more people joining.
Yes, so let's give them another minute.
Sure, that's not a problem. So I will ask all of you to be a little more patient today because today we are also going to cover the feedback for our last class on drafting representations and warranties if time permits. And let's see how it goes.
How are you all doing? How was your assignment? Like 2 sessions until now?
It's actually great that a lot of students have submitted their assignments from last class. So I think it's really going to benefit them when we take the feedback session today.
That's really nice.
Also, I would request all of you that please fill the feedback form after the session so that it helps us deliver better next time. So it's for you. And I hope you fill the feedback forms.
8:03, right? We'll start, Priyanka.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So for today's session, we are going to discuss on obligation, how to draft a payment obligation, breach, and what are the remedies that's available in an event of breach of contract, especially from an Indian context. Okay. So before I help you understand what is it, can you all tell me what is the rough idea that you have about an obligation? Or what is it? What is breach? What is breach of contract?
Means
Three of you are speaking.
hello.
Yeah. Mithun?
Yeah, breach of contract means
So,
whatever the agreed terms between the parties has not been fulfilled by the parties, that will be treated as a breach of contract.
Okay. Fine. So there's something that's
Ma'am,
obligation.
by obligation, it would mean that it's a duty.
Okay, obligation is a duty. Okay, what sort of an obligation can be imposed on a person?
To do or not to do a
Duty to
particular
fulfill the contract.
One after the other, please. Like if multiple people speak, it's very difficult. Mithun, tell me.
Yeah, obligation. Like if I have to deliver the for example, if I have to deliver the product on time and it has not been delivered on time, so the other party can demand for the compensation or any kind of penalties or like that if it is
Okay.
written on that contract.
So you mean to say that there's some obligation on me, like something to do or refrain from
Yeah.
doing. In an event, if I fail to do what it's called as breach, and in
Yes.
an event of breach, whatever is agreed in the agreement, that is something a person can go ahead and do it.
Yes,
Fine.
yes, ma'am. Yes.
Ravina, you have something else to share?
Whatever you said, obligations, it's like something we promised in an agreement, like I'll do something in exchange of you paying me something. For example, in a contract of sale, I'll exchange my goods and you will pay me the amount. So I'm obligated to sell my products to you in exchange of money. And if I'm not able to send the products or transport the products, I'll have to pay the damages that has been caused. So that's breach of contract.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Next slide, please. As most of you have rightly mentioned, in today's session, we are going to discuss about what is the difference between an obligation and covenant, what is a payment obligation, how it needs to be drafted, because it's important that a consideration is must in every contract, especially from an Indian contract standpoint. Under Section 25 of the Contract Act, consideration is mandatory. So let's see how to draft a payment clause. What is breach? Under breach, we have two different categories, material breach and residuary breach. I'll explain what is it, how is it different. Cure period, in case if there is a breach, a person can go ahead and give him some time to rectify his mistake. That is called as a cure period. It is optional, it's not mandatory, it's mutually decided. Then what are the remedies that we have? So this is what we are trying to cover in today's session. Somewhere in between, you may feel lost because it's too much of content to really understand. So just allow me to complete. Once one particular segment is completed, I'll pause, then you please post your questions. Like in between, if you ask a question, maybe in the upcoming slide, I would be answering it. Okay, so just hold on for that. Next slide, please. Obligation, as most of you clearly mentioned it, an obligation is a legal duty which is mutually agreed between the parties in a contract. An obligation can be something to do or to refrain from doing something. Please do remember, something telling a person to do itself is not an obligation. At times, asking a person not to do something is also an obligation. Fundamentally, obligation is pre-decided and clearly mentioned in the agreement. Hence, a call out for all the lawyers here is, any point in time, you draft an obligation clause, do check with your client or your stakeholder to understand what are they aiming to achieve in a contract. Because you may have something in your mind, your other counterparty may have something in his or her mind, but end of the day, when there's a conscious ad item, that's how a contract comes into place. But having something which is very clearly called out to perform or to refrain from doing it, it's obligation. Because I may speak something, I may have also something better to perform, but my contract doesn't call it out, then point one, I'll be confused. I will be in ambiguity, what to perform, what not to perform. Second thing, any remedy that's available under the law will not be available to me. Okay, hence, please do draft an obligation clause really well. I'll help you understand how to draft an obligation clause. But a checkpoint here is discuss with your client, understand their requirements, and then go ahead and draft an obligation clause. Few things can come naturally for you based on your experience, but few things based on the nature of transaction can be suggested only by them. Now, what is covenant? Most of the time in the agreement, we feel a covenant or an obligation are interchangeable terms. Few times people go ahead and do it, but there's a very thin line of difference. Obligation is something which is mutually decided, which varies from a transaction to a transaction between the parties. Okay. Covenant is something which is expressed or it is implied by nature, and law of the land will govern it. Under few circumstances, covenant can be called out, but predominantly it is implied on a person to do based on the culture or based on the society where he is or under the applicable law. Again, here covenant also will be to do something or refrain from doing something. Couple of examples here are, if you say for a lesser, it is important. And usually this covenant term will be tagged along with representation and warranties. If you go ahead and see many templates, you will see representation, warranty, and covenants here under, which means representation is a statement of fact. Warranty is saying that I will not infringe or I will protect it in near future. In case if there is any sort of a loss, I will reimburse it or I will make good of that. Next one is your covenant is basically an implied promise. At times it can be expressed. For example, a company, no one will say that a company has to follow all the applicable law. But once a company is incorporated, it is important to follow all the company law regulations, labor law regulations, everything. All the applicable laws have to be taken care by the company. Second thing, at times we go ahead and say that as an individual, if I have taken a loan, it is important that I have a capability to repay the loan, for which at times they go ahead and take a collateral, or impliedly they'll say that please go ahead and take an insurance. so that even if you die, we will be in a position to recover it through the insurance, maintaining an adequate level of insurance. Or at times when we go ahead with a contract, when we do not know what is the quantum of insurance the person has to take, when it is a service agreement, which is a very meager amount, okay? Under that circumstance, we just have one boilerplate clause on insurance saying that request you to maintain the adequate level of insurance. In an event of any sort of a loss, we can claim it through the insurance. When we do not know, general statement is what we do. Otherwise, we say, as a service provider, I shall always ensure all the applicable laws shall be met by me, because there are n number of laws in a country. Instead, you just say all applicable law, I will take care of it. Next is maintenance of proper accounting standards. Every organization will have a set of accounting standards which will be given to every company. So whenever you maintain the books of accounts, it's important that you maintain as per the accounting standard. Nowhere in the contract will say AS 15 is applicable to you, AS 12 is applicable to you. We do not call out those accounting standards numbers specifically. Instead, we say all the books of account will be maintained as per the applicable accounting standards. So covenant is something which is expressly given or impliedly understood by the party. Never it is required for a company secretary like me to say that, do your regular filings. Never my JD said me. It just said that as a company secretary, all your roles and regulate responsibilities have to be met. That's it. So filing of e-forms, conducting the board meeting in a timely manner, ensuring that the minutes are maintained. This is my responsibility. So this is implied on me. So that's covenant. Next slide. So how to draft an obligation clause? Okay. Any point in time, whenever you have to draft, it's just not for an obligation clause per se. Anything that you want to draft, as most of you are practicing lawyer or some of you are fresher here, which has really worked for me and time testedly proved for me is always pause yourself, then go ahead with drafting. Okay. In a hurry, if you go ahead with drafting, it is very difficult because your thoughts have to be really structured. Usually what I used to do in my initial days of career is I used to take a piece of paper and just think of a transaction. Like if it is a lease deed. Now I am a lessor. Now as a lessor, what are my obligations? As a lessor, what is my responsibility? As a lessor, what can be more favorable for me from a payment clause? I used to always put myself in that position and think about it. After I make a list of all those activities, I would think from the other side. Now for a lessee, what sort of an obligation that I can impose? Maybe I will say regularly make the payment. Do not engage yourself in any illegal activity at the premises. Something I'll think from his standpoint so that even that can be taken care of. So like this, please try to take some time, make a list of those activities, run past with your respective stakeholder, because one, they are the people who are on ground. We know it only more from a theory standpoint or based on our experience in the past transactions that we have done. But knowing more about it is from them. Maybe what are the challenges that they faced in the past? Checkpoint with your finance team. There may be some new finance act has brought in for a real estate. Check with them if there are any clause that needs to be incorporated, which is so mandatory to become an obligation on another party. So firstly, take out some time and make a list of all the activities that the person has to perform or refrain from doing it. Once this list is done, the three fundamentals that you have to ask yourself is when to perform, how to perform, and where to perform. Okay. First of all, when to perform. When is very explicitly call out the timeline. Few contracts are such a date specific. Like I want you to be in Bangalore on May 1st, okay? And I want you to be in the DJ event. It's such a date specific. Your date is non-negotiable in nature. If that's the mandate, mention and check on that and mention in your agreement. In case if it is period specific, in maybe the person can supply the goods any time between 1st of May to 7th of May. In that 7 days, any point in time, he can go ahead and supply. Here it is period specific. So you can just say within this period, by May 7th, you have to deliver all the goods to my office. At times, it is something which is decided on a future date. Today they enter into an agreement, but they will say that via email on a future date, we will agree upon a time and a date based on each transaction, especially when it is a supply of goods agreement. Multiple transactions do happen. You cannot explicitly call out in one agreement because it is a day-to-day activity. One day I need pen, one day I need book, one day I need some onboarding kit for my employees. Every day the transactions happen. Under that circumstance, just draw a reference to an email communication between the respective spots. Even there, the time is very important, because if you have an ambiguity in the time, it is very difficult for any person to perform their respective obligation. Next is how to perform. Under few circumstances, we completely allow the discretion of the service provider to render the service. Like, I want 100 water bottles. Any water bottle of 20 rupees is fine with me. He can give Paralpet, he can give some local material, he can give a thermal flask, whatever it is possible for 20 rupees. I'm not specific about what it is. Okay, he will just come and give it to me. Under few circumstances, I'm very specific about it. Like, this is the quality, this is the quantity, this is how the color combination needs to be. That is how the performance will be pre-decided. Check with your client. Like, are you very specific about the quality, quantity, or any sort of a specification? If yes, please clearly mention in the scope of service or scope of work. You clearly mention it so that other person can adhere to it. After you finish, the third component is where to perform, the place of performance. Because it is important to deliver the goods at a particular time. Like, he's done it, he's even ready to deliver. But if he doesn't know the location, how will you do? At times you want it to be delivered to your registered office or your branch office or some employee's residence, whatever it may be. Maybe you want to send a cake or something. It's like a token of gratitude from your company. So it should go to the respective employee's house. So you have to tell where this needs to be actually performed. So these three components, where, when, and how, has to be clearly captured in your obligation clause. Next, always an obligation is mandatory. It is not an option. I hope all of you know the difference between may and shall. May is optional. Shall is always mandatory. So try to mention, it's not try, you have to mention your obligation clause saying the service provider shall hereby render. The service provider or parties mutually shall perform the following activities. So kindly use the word shall. Under few circumstances, people go ahead and use the word must, agree. I'll show how it is drafted, any of these things. But accepted and universally accepted is use the word shall, because everyone knows the difference between shall and may. Avoid ambiguity, vagueness in your sentences, because it is important to prove it in the court of law to have an unambiguous statement. Any point there is ambiguity, point number one, parties cannot perform their respective obligation. Point number two, the remedy is really far-fetched at that point in time. Okay, so these are few things that you need to keep in your mind while drafting your obligation clause. Next slide. So this is just a sample. Okay, in the first one, I've used the word agreed. Here, render service provider obligations, always give a title or a heading, subheading. Render service as per the specification agreed under the applicable SOW. Second one, I've used the word discipline shall maintain and the must be experienced. I've used the word must. In the third circumstance, I've used the word shall. The service provider agrees that time is the essence and performance of agreement. All goods shall be delivered as per. So all these three are different ways of drafting your obligation clause. Universally accepted is shall, but others also have given you like must and agree also how to incorporate. Whenever you structure a respective sentence, you can go ahead and use it. Okay. Any questions on obligation, general obligations? Anything before we proceed on payment? Are you all following it?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, obligations are what the contract is for, right?
Yes.
The main part. And about covenants, you're going to explain later?
Yeah, covenants have already said, no, it is expressed, it's implied in nature. That's why I said the service provider shall adhere to all the applicable laws. That's all. You're not giving the list there. You'll just say applicable loss. It's implied.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes, Aditya.
Nishmita, Arshita is asking whether you could explain the boilerplate clauses once again.
Which boilerplate clause you want me to explain? Because there's so many boilerplate clauses.
Exactly. Arshita, could you be a little more specific?
Ma'am, actually, it was in reference to what you were saying before,
Hmm.
previously. So,
In the insurance, is it?
yes.
Okay, insurance clause, you can go ahead and clearly say a person, please take a insurance, like a workman compensation insurance for a value of 1 crore. Okay, at times you do not know how to gauge or expressively tell another person what is the amount of insurance that you have to take. And or at times the value of that contract would be just 1 lakh, for which you can't go ahead and tell a person to take 1 crore insurance. But however, you have to protect yourself. So this is a negotiation tip. So you will go ahead and say that it is important for a service provider to take all the adequate insurance. That's it. In a boilerplate, you just give a blanket statement and close it there.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah, Aditya?
Yes, madam, it's regarding the covenant clause. What I understand that it is not explicitly related with the performance of the contract, but it's related with maintaining the conditions pertinent to that performance, right?
Yes, yes. It is something which is supplemental, which is something highly regulated under the law, the culture, or the circumstances. Obligation is pre-decided between the parties.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, now I don't see any other questions, so let me proceed with payment clause. So payment, someone has any question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, I often get confused between the duties clause and this obligation clause. So
okay.
I often fail to, differentiate between the same.
Okay, in a contract standpoint, we say obligation is a legal duty. Okay, but fundamental differences, obligation is a term that you use in contracts. Duty is a term which you use in a general applicable law circumstance. It is my fundamental duty to pay the taxes. It is my fundamental duty that I have to wear helmet while driving. So when it comes to a generic law standpoint, we use the term duty. We don't say an obligation per se. Got it?
Okay.
Fine. Anyone else? I don't see any hands raised. Any questions left in the chat box, Priyanka? I don't think so. Okay, I don't think. Fine. If there's anything, I'll address them at the end. So now let's see how to draft a payment clause, specifically when it comes to international contract, but the same thumb rule to prevail even for your Indian contracts. First and foremost thing, decide on the consideration. The amount has to be clearly decided between the parties. Maybe I am telling it is 250 rupees or $250. Other side, the person is telling $350. This is still under negotiation, but in the contract, what is entered only matters at the end of the day. Hence, clearly ask both the parties, have your consideration clause mentioned in figures and words, which is very important because whenever the invoices are raised, people, if there is a dispute, they go back and check on the contract. If you are working for a service recipient, having a lesser denomination is still fine, but having higher denomination may not be favorable to you. So always have a consideration clause clearly mentioned. Next is type of payment. Few circumstances, the payment may be 1 month after rendering service, quarterly, half yearly, annual payment, or they may be at times advance payment. Do check on this because your agreement has to clearly mention whether it is a advance payment, later payment, monthly payment, quarterly payment, whatever. It is important to mention that. Currency exchange, very important clause in an international contract because we may engage ourselves. Like if both the parties are Indians, it's easy to say it is Indian rupees. But one person is in India, another is in US. So you have to mention it in dollars. Then do tell what is the exchange rate that you will be taking. At times, what parties do is they will say the exchange rate shall be, irrespective of the circumstance, 75 rupees per dollar. They'll pre-decide for this particular month, they'll do it. At times, what they do, they'll say on the day when I raise the invoice, whatever the in rate is, the currency rate is, that is what I'm going to charge. They go on the floating currency exchange rate. Depends on the parties again. But for you as a lawyer, it is important to clearly mention the consideration in which currency are you going to pay. The exchange rate will be decided between the parties. It may be fixed or floating. Usually it is a finance team call out. Let them go ahead and mention it. Without obligation, a contract cannot even happen. Then why are you even entering? So obligations is mandatory. Next is when to talk about the taxes. At times, the consideration may be including tax, excluding tax. So do check on that. But for you, an add-on would be the bank charges. At times in China, the bank charges are very high because they're highly regulated. They have 3 mechanisms of making the payment. So the interest, the bank charge rate should always be borne by the Chinese person. In US, it is absolutely fine. US, Philippines also, it's absolutely fine. Your bank rate is not that voluminous, okay? So it is absolutely fine under that circumstance. So do check who will bear the bank charges. If there's some additional bank charge which the other party has to bear, explicitly call that out. Along with the taxes, bank charges will be an additional point for you in international contracts. When to raise the invoice? As I clearly told, maybe 5th of every month, 7th of every month. You may give him some timeline to raise it. Let him follow that if there is anything. If not, you can say in the beginning of the month or end of the month. That's it. Time period to process. Any point in time, once an invoice is submitted, there will be certain period of time taken by the another party to make the payment. That is called as the payment cycle. Hence, you have to talk about it with your finance team. Every company will have their internal policy. Few times within 7 days, they process an invoice, 30 days, 45 days, whatever. Check with your respective business and do it. A tip for you here is, anytime you are a service recipient, have a longer payment cycle because you will have a lot of time to repay the money for the services that you've taken. If you are a service provider, because you've given a service, have a shorter business cycle to receive your payments because you need money for your turnover purpose. But universally accepted is between 30 days to 45 days. That is what they usually follow. But in US, at times, they ask only 15 days payment cycle. So that also depends on the negotiation, how you do it. Another thing is, check whether it is days or business days. At times, blindly, when we review the contract, we just say 30 days and we do it. But at times, it would be business days. We would have missed on that word business because business days will not include your Saturday and Sunday in many international contracts. So please check on that. Based on that, your drafting also will vary. Next one is your late penalty and charges. If I do not make the payment within a stipulated period of time, which I've agreed in the aforesaid clause, like 30 days, 45 days, whatever, can the another person impose some penalty on me? Accepted again. But most of them would prefer to have a long-run business relationship. Hence, they will not have a penalty clause. But there are few software companies, especially when they are a monopoly in the industry, they insist on having a penalty clause. Now, a key takeaway for you, if you are a person who is supposed to make the payment, don't agree on any late penalty charges. If you are a person who is receiving the payment, impose a penalty so that the other person will fasten the process and make the payment. Next is set off and deduction. At any point in time, just a second. Set off or deduction. Few times we'll say that I'll make the advance payment, but in the upcoming, you have not provided a proper service to me. Like you had to give me like 30 water bottles. You have, I've anyways made payment for 30, but it's okay. Next 2 bottles you have not given me, or it was defective product which I returned. In the upcoming invoices, I will set it off. Option can be thought through. Okay, if you have made an advance payment under those circumstances, your set off clause will play a prominent role. Mode of payment in international contract, definitely cash is not appreciated. So always it is bank transfer. So do mention the bank details and do call that out. Increment, at times, if they say after a month, 10% increment is applicable. After 1 year, 20% is applicable. If any such increment is pre-decided, you can mention it. If it is not, then parties may mutually agree at the end of the term. You can just give this caveat statement and just close it. Okay, I repeat, consideration is always mandatory in a contract. Mention the consideration, including or excluding taxes, mode of making the payment, call out on the type of currency that you will do, think about the exchange rate, think about the bank transfer, late penalty charges, payment cycle, 30 days, 45 days, whatever. The mode of payment by default in international contracts would be your bank transfer. So these are the few essentials which a payment clause should have. Let us see an example in the next slide. The first one, I've included all the three components together because it's just an example. In consideration of the services provided, the person shall have a right to raise the invoice at the end of every month. I've given the time period to raise. Amount, I've clearly called it as in dollars, $10,000. So even in words, please mention $10,000, including all taxes. Okay, all the tax component, type of currency, consideration, when to raise the invoice. 4 questions are answered in this one clause. Next one, the payment cycle. The payment shall be due and payable within 30 days from the receipt of complete and correct invoice at the address. I've given 30 days time period here. Currency, I've said that it is US dollars here. Right to set off. I said recipient, if there is any sort of amount that is validly in dispute in the upcoming service, I can set it off. Fee escalation, parties mutually agree for an escalation of $100 after the completion of first year of the agreement. So after 1 year, this agreement value will be 10,100. Okay, so that is how a particular clauses need to be drafted. This is a very simplest way of drafting. You can go ahead, you can think of other components that you want to include, like a bank transfer you can include. You can talk about the exchange currency. Here it is like $10,000 that is standard. But if you're thinking of the exchange currency, you have even that clause drafted. You can make it fixed, floating. But these are basic stuffs that a clause should have. Any questions on payment obligation?
Yes, ma'am. In mode of payment, you mentioned that we can mention bank details. So what exactly are these details that we mentioned?
Which bank account is he having? Like a legal entity name. Then you talk about the bank. Like if it is in India, then IFSC code, which branch it is, so that every month you have to make the payment to them, right? So that will be captured here. So that
the complete.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So the complete account number can be mentioned?
It can be mentioned. There's no harm in it.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions?
Ma'am, can the parties agree on the fixed rate rather than fluctuating currency rate?
They can. They can, but here again, it is a negotiation. It depends on the nature of the service, and it also depends upon how the economic condition is at that point in time. So if you are a person who is very unstable about the economy, then go by the fixed rate of interest. If you are very sure the minor differences will not make any sort of an impact, and if your payment cycle is very short, go for a floating rate. It's absolutely fine.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Please, can you just repeat about when to raise the invoice?
Like if I have rendered the service to you, it may be after a week, I raise the invoice. After 30 days, I raise the invoice. So that is when to raise the invoice. Is it after complete rendering the service, or after complete 1 year, or I will receive the payment? So it is advance payment, then I render the service. So that is when you raise the invoice.
Can we raise the invoice immediately after there's a service that's completed?
You can do it, but usually we do not accept such way, because maybe if a person is rendering a service like for 20 days and 30 out of 30 days, okay, each day if he raises, think about the administration hassle. Usually it is a one-time activity, and the next activity would be after 3 months, 4 months. Like it is not an ongoing activity, and it's okay. After a service you can do, especially your lawyer's fee, right? Maybe one activity we finish, we just go ahead and raise the invoice, and it is okay. Think about the administration work also when drafting this clause.
All right.
Any questions? Is it fine? Can I proceed?
One more question, ma'am.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about floating and prefixed exchange rate. Floating for a very short period, and where should we use the prefixed? exchange rate? In which kind of conditions?
See, in case if your economy is quite stable in nature, okay, then it's okay. You can go ahead with your floating rate. See, first of all, forget about your economy if you do not know as a lawyer. If your service is something which is very much demanded in a particular nation and your economy is still stable, okay, then go for a floating rate of interest. Because especially when your economy is very stable, definitely the price fluctuations will be minimal and the amount which you get will be always higher. But if your economy is very unstable, then go for a fixed rate so that no matter what happens, like for example, Sri Lanka at this point in time, for them in this circumstance, fixed is a better option. Because assuming it's 65 rupees, whatever it is, even if the economy is such a dip, now 65 rupees, that person will get no matter what it is.
Okay, for unstable economies, they should go for a fixed rate.
Fixed, yes.
Okay.
Okay. And it also depends on nature of service. It's not like a thumb rule. It also depends on what sort of a service it is. Usually when it comes to a software licensing, right, they don't go with this fixed or floating. They will say $10,000. On the day, whatever I raise the invoice, that is what I will take. They will just go by the floating purpose. Like the example which I gave you, that is something which is accepted. $10,000, that's all. I'll get $10,000. You pay 75 rupees when you convert, or you pay 110 rupees when you convert. I'm least bothered. I should get my $10,000. That's all they will think of.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Can I proceed then? Any other questions? Okay, then let me proceed. So are you all clear with the general obligations, how to draft an obligation clause, payment, how to draft the payment obligation? Yes or no? Quick.
Ma'am, I have a question on the obligation part. If the company is a startup, as for example, and they're dealing with multiple vendors from different countries as well as India, and they do not have a set rule for the type of obligations that they want to pursue, and they just said it is like as per the the process increases and things. So how are we going to define in that point?
It's very
the
difficult.
obligation clause.
One thing, you can just keep it very vague, saying that on need basis, parties shall mutually enter into a written agreement and decide on the obligations. But it's very vague, because you execute an agreement today, but tomorrow you may feel it's need of the hour. But if your agreement is silent, the other person may not accept it. At least a very broad level obligations have to be clearly called out.
Yeah, it's like a basic understanding. Like, for example, a company is a manufacturing company and they're hiring some IT professionals. It's just an example. So they just know that they want the expert IT professionals as consultants or some vendors, but they do not know what will be their specific technical obligation, how they are going to process, or what is the SOW. So they just want to have an agreement with them that you are IT persons and you're going to serve us the technical part. There is no detailing. So in that scenario, are we having any standard clause which can cover everything, whatever they serve?
See, as an IT professional, probably he can be in a software development, or he can be even a simple IT help desk. Okay, without knowing why a person, you will never hire a person. So you can just go ahead and tell him that you will be an software developer. The softwares that you would be in a position to develop, like I'm not a software person, maybe 1, 2, 3 version of whatever it is. Okay, this very broad level you can call out. This is the technology that currently the company is using. Hence, you will not engage yourself in dissimulation, recompiling, or anything where the current network diagram of the company is going to change. You're not going to make any changes to the existing software that the company has installed. So a very broad, at least you have to have it in your appointment letter or any consultant agreement that you were going to do.
Can we make an annexure or an addendum to the main agreement and individually go forward whenever we are going forward with each consultant's recruitment for that professional?
You can certainly do. You can see, always my recommendation would be have a very broad level one. Okay, like how I gave you an example. Like you will engage yourself in the version of so and so, like 10 versions. When you're explicitly telling this is what software you're going to develop, then have a standalone addendum to it. But my question is, then negotiation will be very difficult. He may not agree to it at that point. At least now, in a broad circumstance, if you have mentioned it beforehand, it is at least good to handhold him.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah. Another question of mine is on the payments part, ma'am. Usually nowadays, it's like every company are doing global businesses dealing with multiple currencies. So in that scenario, how we will judge on the exchange rate and like the constant floating of currencies prices?
So that's why I gave you this example of the 10,000. I don't think which country, what I'm doing. I just have to get $10,000. That's all. You pay it in yen, you pay it in dollars, you pay it in rupees, that's okay. My account should get this much amount.
Okay, so that should not vary. We cannot claim as per the country's current rate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, especially when you do this global contracts, that's how we do it. If it is not a client specific, for example, a Microsoft software, which Microsoft is back in US and across the globe when they give it, they will not sit and check how much is it in China today, how much is it in Philippines, how much is it in UK. They will say, you pay me $1,000. For me, it may cost very huge because for me, it is what, 76 rupees as on today. But for someone like in Canada, it may be very cheap because for them, the Canadian dollars hardly makes any difference to them. Same $1,000 only would be very cheap for them. So it is up to the parties, but I should get my money. That's all is my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Can I proceed? Okay. Next one.
So Nishita, there's one question by Hania Khan, and she says that could you please give 2-3 examples under obligation clause and covenants clause?
Okay. So let's take an example of lease deed, assuming that lease is a document which is pretty simple, where one person gives his possession of a property to another person to stay for a certain period of time. As an obligation on a lessor, okay, I will say that the lessor shall give the peaceful occupancy of the vacant possession on 1st of May. The lessor shall make the periodical payment of property taxes. The lessor shall not adversely impact my stay. Whenever I'm staying there, he is not going to impact it. These are my obligations. Like he is not unwantedly coming and interfering. Those are the obligations which is pre-decided and mutually discussed between the parties. Now, covenant. Covenant is expressed or implied. As a lessor would have made a statement saying, I'm a lawful owner, title holder of this property. The covenant on lessor is, he shall not unknowingly make any encumbrances on the property. It's a covenant, it's a promise, because he is the owner. He has a right to do whatever he wants, but whenever he is creating an encumbrance, he should let me know about it. Okay. It is important for a lessor. Payment of tax is something which I clearly know under the law he has to pay, but I don't know what are the other things that he has to do. I am not aware. Maybe there is some encumbrance. There is a home loan. So technically he has to pay every month EMI. If he doesn't pay, I may have to vacate the premises. So under the covenant, I'll say that any other covenants or other obligations that the person has under any other law or agreements, he should adhere to them, because I don't know about his home loan. I don't know about what are the other applicable law apart from property tax. He has to take care of them. That is covenant. Are you clear, Hania, is it? Sorry. Covenant is mandatory. It is mandatory. Covenant obligation, both are mandatory in nature. But covenant, you may not mention also. Even if you mention, your mention hardly makes any difference, because it's a general law which is taking care of it. It's a culture which is taking care of it. Okay. Like just because in the agreement, I don't say that the person should not encumber or the person has to pay the EMI, which is a covenant to him. If I don't mention also, by default, it is important to give me a peaceful occupancy. That's how it works. Fine, then I don't see any other questions. So let me proceed. What is breach? As most of you rightly pointed, when a person fails to fulfill his obligation, either partially or completely, it's called as breach. Okay, so it is not required always in order to call a breach. all the terms and conditions in a contract have to be not met by the other person. One or two also, if he is not met, it amounts to breach. There are two major segments under the breach. One is called as a material breach. Another is your residuary breach. Material breach in a contract per se, something is very clearly called out in the agreement and the person fails to fulfill it. So material breach, I've just given major 5 components. Okay, material breach per se in your service agreement. Whenever I have to render a particular service, I do not follow it or do not do it in a proper manner as pre-decided. That amounts to the breach of service. In supply of goods, goods have to be of a certain condition. If you have not done that, it is a breach of the delivery or based on the specification of goods. Here in case of service supply, that service or a supply of a material is very clear. What is this last in session? I don't know what was in the chat box. Okay, so anything that is so specific about the supply or service, when I don't take care of it, it amounts to the breach. Next is breach of representation and warranty. As we discussed in the earlier class, representation is a statement by which another person has entered into a contract. Otherwise, the person wouldn't have entered only. I went ahead and made a misrepresentation, then it amounts to breach. For example, whenever you go ahead and take a corporate loan, especially as a company, being a legal entity, it's not a natural person, artificial person. The board of directors and the shareholders will have to approve whenever you're taking any sort of a corporate loan under the Companies Act. I will go and represent before the bank and say that, yes, I have a requisite board approval and shareholders approval. So please grant me the loan. Now the bank has gone ahead, maybe they failed in their due diligence or they just saw the fabricated document and they sanctioned the loan. Now, after the sanctioning, you have even gone ahead and paid the first month EMI. Then they realize this is a fabricated document because after you got a shareholder's approval, you have not filed the MCA forms or through some source they got to know about it. Now it amounts to misrepresentation of fact. An event of misrepresentation amounts to breach of contract because here your representation was a primary reason for them to grant you loan. When you failed on it, it is a breach. The third one, any point in time, especially in subcontracting agreement, the person knows that whatever he supplies or whatever he further renders a service, it will be further given to another person. When you're aware of it and you fail, that is where there is a clear financial loss. Let me explain on this. Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, all three of them are in a contract. Assume A is a real estate company. It's a residential apartment. Now A is onboarded B, who is a facility management. It is a responsibility. Every day B comes to the premises, he cleans the premises and he goes. It's an apartment, every day common area has to be cleaned. Now B, instead of he coming and doing it, he would have done a subcontracting. He would have given this assignment to C and say that, okay, go to this particular apartment and go and clean. On my behalf, you do it. So some amount I'll pay. So he may take some X amount from A, but some X amount will be given to C. That's a completely consideration related. But service related, now C is very much aware. A and B have entered into a contract. C is just a subcontractor. And he knows in case if C fails in rendering the service, there is a penalty that would be slapped on B. He's aware of all these things. But if the C fails to do it, it amounts to breach. Now A has a complete right to sue B because there is a breach of subcontracting and there is a financial loss that you've been incurred because it is not directly the mistake of B. It is actually a mistake of C. But end of the day here, B is in between. He's stuck for it. So the further obligations also when it is clearly called out and if a person fails to perform it, it calls out for a breach. A good example for it is just subcontracting agreement. Only in subcontract agreement this will be there, otherwise it may not be there. Next is your breach of your covenant. Few statements may not be expressively called out in the agreement, but you have to follow it. For example, if I've given some property as a collateral, now suddenly I'm not selling it, okay? Suddenly there's one national highways that's just passed, okay? Now, due to which my 30-40 site, which was there, it's become like 10 feet is just gone through national highways. Now, as a prudent person, it is important I go back and tell the bank, see, 30-40 was the collateral that I gave you. Now, due to national highways, 10 feet is gone. So the volume of the land that I had, the acres of land, whatever I had, it is reduced now. So you have to go ahead and tell. If you don't tell it, then it amounts to breach of a covenant. If not, for example, there is some property suddenly damaged, there is some earthquake, you are unable to identify your property, like how it happened in Kerala. Suddenly something happened, you cannot identify where your land is. Now it's important as a covenant, you go and tell the bank, yes, this is something which I had to. It's a prudent thing. Your agreement wouldn't have called out, but it's a prudent practice that you go ahead and tell the person that there is some sort of a change and I will have to take care of it. So that's your breach of covenant. Next is a breach of payment. At any point in time, you have to make the payment every month or once in 15 days, whatever, as mutually agreed between the parties. If you need to fail the payment, you can immediately go ahead and terminate the contract, or you can give him some cure period to give another 10 days to make the payment and do it. However parties want it, go ahead and do it. So that is again your breach of payment. So the breach, material breach, when it comes to service and supply, rep and warranty, covenant, these three are mandatory. Okay, in every contract you will see it. Whenever there's a clear financial loss, that comes only in your subcontracting. A breach of payment also in every contract you will have. Under few contracts, additional breaches may become your material breach, like which is very substantial. Simple thumb rule to call a breach as material breaches. It is so essential in a contract and you've breached it, especially in a non-disclosure agreement or in a JV transaction, like a joint venture transaction. Not to give the confidential information to third party. That is so important, but you've gone ahead and revealed it. Breach of confidentiality in a JV or in an NDA is a material breach. In a software development, someone has given you some tool to develop, which completely has your employee data or your customer data. This person has gone ahead and misappropriated this data, or there's some data hack or data leak, something happened. Under that circumstance, breach of data is a material breach in such software development agreements. Okay, so in case of few transactions, confidentiality data breach also can become your material breach. So just for you to understand, go and check on the nature of transaction. Ask a question to yourself, which is very essential for a contract. Per se, services in a service agreement, or supply of goods, the type of goods. Rep and warranty mandatory. Non-payment is again a material breach. Covenant may be a material breach. If you're a subcontracting agreement, again, it may be a material breach for you. Or in case of a data privacy, confidentiality, check on them, which is so substantial becomes a material breach. You have to clearly call out. In an event of breach of confidentiality, rep and warranty, covenant, payment, it is considered to be material breach. You have to clearly mention it. At times, if you really miss out on it, it is absolutely fine. Nothing to worry about it. What you can do is you just have one disclaimer sort of a sentence in the end. Any other terms and conditions that is breached under this agreement shall be considered as the residuary breach, and all the remedies that's available under the law and the contract shall be applicable or shall be available. Because at times you may not know confidentiality breaches. It's so important, not important. You do not know whether data is shared or not shared. Maybe suddenly in your future, you can go ahead and share. If you do not know, I would always recommend you to have this blanket statement known as your residuary breach or residuary clause. Just saying all other terms and conditions fall under residuary clause. And if there is a breach, available remedies under law or contract will be available. So these are the two types of your breach, material breach and your residuary breach. There's one additional segment which we very specifically say in your bank agreements, okay, loan transactions per se, that is called as event of default. In case if a person defaults something, you don't give him a second chance, okay, or you will not hold him liable only to pay that amount. Instead, you will say that person to completely repay the amount. For example, you get to know the person has gone ahead and sold the collateral property. Now you will not say that, okay, man, it's okay, you have a job, you keep paying the EMI to me. You will not say that. You will say whatever loan is there, immediately you close the loan. It may or may not happen based on the banks. However, that's a good example for your event of default. Suddenly, a person is in an insolvency proceeding. The moment the proceeding is there, you are a secured creditor. You will get the first right to recover the money from him. You will exercise that right to completely recover the money. You will not see whether the person will get a better financial position tomorrow and wait for next 10 years. That is called as event of default. One event of mistake that the person would have done, which is such a grave in nature, like insolvency, selling of the collateral, under those circumstances, you say it is an event of default and you go ahead and completely cancel the contract and recover the entire money. So that's an additional type of breach which we see in banking related transactions. Any questions?
Ma'am, I have one other question.
1 second. Ritin has raised his hand. Okay, tell me, Ritin. Please raise your hand because. Okay, Ritin, tell me. Okay, who was that person who asked a question?
Ma'am.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, the thing is that actually I shared the link which was registered to my name on the Discord group. So many of them are having the same name as mine to today's class.
Okay, so it's okay. Now you tell. You have a question, right? It's okay. Now tell me.
Ma'am, it wasn't me.
It was not you? Okay. Now who is it? Okay, fine. Who had a question? Go ahead.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
I had.
Okay.
Okay, you continue first.
The thing is, if you don't raise the hand, I will not know who is it. That's a problem. That's why I always keep telling, please raise your hand. Okay, now there is one Ritin. Now, which Ritin is this now? Whoever has raised the hand.
I'm not Ritin. I don't know how this name came.
Okay, there is an option called as rename.
Okay, I'll do that. But first, ma'am,
do that. Yeah, tell me.
I want to ask this question that you said that at the end we need to have this residuary clause sentence, right? So what if we forgot some things like covenant breach or payment breach? We can just add these two if you remember: breach of representation and warranty and breach of obligation, and then we just write that.
Yes, just protect yourself by your residuary. That's it.
Okay, fine. So it's okay to forget something for the.
It's not okay to forget. But what I'm trying to say is it may happen. It's never okay to forget anything as a legal counsel. But you can, I mean, you may not foresee at that time. So just to protect yourself, have your residuary clause.
Okay, fine, ma'am.
Okay. And there are 3 dots on top of your name, right? Just there you will find a rename option. You can rename yourself.
Right, ma'am, right.
Okay, yes. Okay, who was that other Kajuri? Who was the other person? Kajuri, no? Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, ma'am, sorry, I'm not seeing the raising hand option somehow in my
reactions.
Laptop. So I have a question. How an unsecured creditor will have a claim in any kind of breach? If he's investing, for example, in a company and the company has gone in for dissolve, without mentioning anything to the creditor, investor or the unsecured creditor, what the remedy will be in that case?
Under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, under the Insolvency Bankruptcy Act, the act is very clear that first of all, you have to pay for all your secured creditors, then pay for all your unsecured creditors. So any point in time, a activity is going on, I mean the proceedings is going on, a notice will be served for all the secured creditor, and in the books of account, whoever unsecured creditor names are there, the names will be given. Once you fulfill all the obligations of a secured creditor, like he has 10 lakhs, 6 lakhs you pay for secured creditor. After that, remaining 4 lakhs you pay for your debenture holders and your unsecured creditors. After that, whatever is pending, you come forward and pay for your preference shareholder, equity shareholder. So that's how it has been followed.
And if that unsecured creditors or the investor's name is not at all registered, and he has been investing with the belief that he is an unsecured creditor, can he still claim his position or investment?
Any point in time, if you're entering any sort of a loan, maybe secured or unsecured, it should always reflect in the balance sheet of the company. That's why when you always see the balance sheet, you have your assets and liabilities, you will say secured creditors, unsecured creditors. You will give this disclaimers. You have to mention who is it, what is the amount. The list of it will come in the notes to accounts. In that case also, if your name is not there, it will be considered just as a Benami transaction. You will not, or you may not have a chance to recover the money. Because when you've given a money, end of the day, you want it to be there, right? Why will you just randomly give a person?
No, the person who is investing has been told that you are registered as an unsecured creditor, but he did not have a knowledge that his name is listed as an unsecured creditor. And he goes ahead and invests there. Later on, he comes to know his name in the unsecured creditor list is not there. So in that way, how would he claim the money back?
Ignorance of law, ignorance of fact is no excuse. You can just go and file before the court. If they agree, it may work. It may not work. Honestly, it may not work.
Okay. I think Huratul Malik has a question.
Yes, tell me.
Like breach of contract, like whether it's regarding payment or representation and warranties. So like in those clauses only we can mention that if these clauses are breached, these are the remedies available, or separately under a breach of contract clause we're supposed to mention it, or both ways can be done.
Both ways. No worries. It's just the art of drafting. That's it.
Okay. So
in an event of a breach, in an event of breach of this particular clause, it shall be considered as a material breach. Instead, I mean, if there is only one, what I usually do is, if there is only one, then I just call it right there and close it. If there are multiple, like 5, 6, 7, then I say in an event of breach of clause number 15, 16, 17, 18, and bracket, I'll say what are this clause, rep and warranty, blah, blah, blah. I will tell that are considered as material breach. And all the remedies that's available under the law and equity, including but not limited to, or the damages, whatever, I'll mention it. I'll have one standalone clause. Depends. But both are absolutely fine.
So, ma'am, material breach are the only ones wherein remedies are available. Residuary
it is available for both. That is available to both. But in material breach, proving is little easy. In residuary breach, again, it amounts to interpretation.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So, Nishwita, we can also set what constitutes a material breach in the definitions clause, right?
We can do that. But any point in time, you have a conflict between your definition clause and the main clause. Your main clause will always prevail. That's the reason it's better to give it in a main clause.
Of course. Okay. Nishwita, could you also once more like to repeat what is a residuary clause? Because some of our students need an explanation once again.
Okay, residuary clause means at any point in time when you're drafting, if you're unsure of what could constitute a breach or what would constitute a material breach, just have one caveat, sort of a disclaimer, just saying that any other terms and conditions, if either party do not fulfill it or fail in their obligation, it's considered as breach. And all the remedy that's available under the law or contract is available. That's it.
Right. So basically, you just resort to the common law or the civil law. Let's say you refer to the substantive regime for contracts, and that is your remedy, right? There is no alternative defined remedy that in this particular agreement that you can resort to. Right. Okay. So Nikunj is asking that if there's if the investment agreement, if there's an investment agreement, but how to know that the unsecured amount is accounted by the company? Okay.
Where is this question? I can't see it at all.
He has direct messaged me.
Okay, fine.
So
what is it? Could you please
that
repeat?
if there's an investment agreement, how can we know that the unsecured amount is accounted by the company?
Investment will always reflect in your share capital. Any point in time you make an investment, in return you would get the shares of the company, or you would at least get a debenture certificate. Only these two modes is how you can take it. If not, you will have to take it under the unsecured loan. If you're taking it as unsecured loan, then it will reflect in your balance sheet as unsecured loan. If you're taking it as a debenture, you'll become a debenture holder, you'll get the certificate. If you're a shareholder, share capital structure of the company will change and you will become a shareholder. Your name will be in the register. So only these option is available. So when you clearly say it's investment agreement, definitely you will get shares.
Definitely. Okay.
Was
I
that
hope this
was it?
question is answered, Nikunj.
Nikunj, is it okay?
Yeah. Okay. Then I think Huratul Malik has another question.
Yes.
Over my hand.
Sorry?
Okay, Mithun, I think she wants to lower.
Yeah. In material breach, the all point has to be mentioned in the contract, or if I say if there any material breach of the contract, then a party can.
You
blah,
have to
blah.
define material breach. You have to explicitly call out what is material breach.
Okay, and then the breach of other obligation and residuary clause, both are same, or there is thin line difference of material financial impact and other also have the
Okay, very simple way to understand. Anything that is substantial for a contract to be performed is material. Okay.
Okay.
Anything which is just ancillary becomes your residuary.
Okay, got it.
At times you forget, so try to have this caveat statement to protect yourself. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions? I don't see any, no?
So I think Tarun had a question, but then
I think maybe it was same. Oh, you
No,
still have?
actually,
Okay, then.
you said there are only two ways to invest in a company, shares or debentures. What about deposits, ma'am? Are they also called investments? Can they be categorized as investments?
In private limited company, you can't even take deposits. First thing. In a public company, whenever you take a deposit, you should be an NBFC sort of an organization where you have a public funding. You have to follow the requisite RBI rules and regulations, everything, and only then you can go ahead and take the deposit. Randomly, you can't take it. So there, your name will definitely be reflected.
Okay, NBFC, ma'am. I don't know what NBFC is.
Non-banking financial companies.
Okay, those companies can accept deposits.
Yes, they can. But you have to take requisite RBI approval. Anytime you take deposit from any person, RBI approval is mandatory. So in RBI approval, the amount, the name of the person, his PAN details, everything will be taken.
So these are like banks only.
Yes.
But different.
And yeah, and even you have to file forms with the MCA. So there's no escape route. That can't happen.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Dell, you have to rename yourself.
Okay, so I don't know, a person who's using a Dell computer has a question, I can say. So,
I don't know, it might be me. Sorry.
Okay, tell me.
I forgot to do. So basically what I could understand residuary clause is, it's that sort of a cover or shield that whatever we called out in that agreement that amounts to breach does not amount, we run up to this clause. So this is the breach, this is the residuary breach, we take this cover, right?
I didn't get you at all. Sorry, you need to be a bit louder.
Am I audible enough, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible now. Yes, tell me.
So ma'am, basically what I could understand of residuary breaches, whatever sort of breaches that we have called out in the agreement, when we do not find, when we breach anything and we take cover of this, this is sort of a shield, when we do not cover any breach under the called out breaches, we take this cover. So this is residuary breach, and we take this residuary.
Yes, it's like a shield only, but always in drafting have material breach. You have to first of all understand what is material breach, which is so substantial. See, in a service agreement, rendering a service is substantial, without which why will you even do it?
I got the point, ma'am. I got the point.
This is like a shield, correct? Yeah. So this is something top of it. This is not exclusive. This is on top of it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, don't think that just having residuary clause is more than enough. I'll protect myself. No, this is over and above your material breach clause.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you done? If so, you can just lower your hand.
That's a question.
No, I think he's done. He's forgotten to lower the hand.
Okay. No problem. I think
you're done. Just lower your hand if you're done. Both of you.
Yeah, I will do that.
Yes. Okay. Next one. What are the remedies that's available for breach? First one is recension. Not universally accepted or followed. In rarest circumstances, people go ahead and do it. Any point in time, you enter into a contract which is legal, okay, which is lawful in nature. But while rendering the service, it becomes suddenly unlawful. Under that circumstance, when other party is not agreeing to terminate, you can just go and file a declaratory suit before the court of law and put yourself completely out of that transaction. That is recension. Or you have entered into a voidable contract. which both of you thought it's a valid contract, but it's avoidable in nature. Under that circumstance also, you can just file an application before the court and you can get your rescission order. A good example is anytime you have your partition suit that has been going on for a very long period of time, and now the property and ancestral property is completely divided among 4-5 siblings, like assume 4 of them. Now you, just to understand which portion of the land you got, what you got, because in the judge's order, he will say north side, west side, this is what it is. But it is important for you to know what is the measurement, 30, 40 or 20 by 80, whatever you want on the north side, west side, whatever it is. You will just make an application before the court for a declaratory suit. You will go to the sub-registrar office, make an application. The sub-registrar will come, he will draw the boundaries, he'll give you a proper allotment plan for it. He will do the entire planning of which side, what is the measurement, what is the height, what is the width, all those things he will do, and he'll give it to you. So tomorrow you become an exclusive owner of it, because your partition suit is just something which everyone will get to know, but a clarity is not given. But through this declaratory suit, you get a lot of clarity about your property. So usually I have seen in property matters, declaratory suits are very highly followed. But under the law, the option that's available, any point in time, suddenly the contract becomes unlawful in nature, or a contract which was executed itself was voidable in nature. Now you want to step back of it, where termination option is still available and parties are not exercising it. They can go under the law, that is rescission. Not highly appreciated or practiced, but an option available under law for you all to know about it. Next is termination. Termination is basically, I'm telling I'm not interested to continue with this particular transaction. Termination are of 2 kinds. That is termination for convenience and termination for breach. Termination for convenience means I need not give any sort of a reason to terminate the contract, like your voluntary resignation. I do not want to continue in this company. So I just go ahead and tell I will terminate this particular contract, like an employment agreement. Okay, so that is termination for convenience, where I'll give some notice period, like 30 days, 40 days, 1 month, whatever I want. I will just serve that notice period and I will exit out of that relationship without giving any reason why I'm exiting. Another is termination for breach, which we have discussed in the earlier slide. I will clearly say that you did not make the payment, which amounts to material breach. So I'm terminating the contract immediately. There's a rep and warranty. Immediately I'm terminating. So you are giving him the reason for termination. That is called as breach. Now this breach may be a material breach. If you have defined your material breach really well, it is good to take a shelter for termination. Because if you've just considered it to be a residuary clause, it opens the floor for interpretation and it is very hard to substantiate. Then another option available is just a termination for convenience, where you have to serve the notice period and exit out of it. But if you've gone ahead under breach, then it is very easy. Another circumstances for immediate termination would be in an event of insolvency, because never you can have a contract with an insolvent person. A person turns unsound, or a company is completely stopped its business operations. All this while they were rendering a particular service, all of a sudden they stop the business operation. Under these circumstances, you can go ahead and immediately terminate the contract. Okay, these are 2 ways. For convenience or breach, you can completely exit from your contractual obligation. Third one is your specific performance. Specific performance is per se not a right available to you. It is at the discretion of the court, a specific performance can happen. So whenever a court feels a monetary compensation is not sufficient, the court may order for specific performance. For example, I will pay a token advance of 10 lakhs to purchase a plot of 30-40, which is 50 lakhs rupees. So we entered into an agreement to sale. We say that on May 2nd, let's do the registration. All of these things we will agree. Suddenly on April 28th, the person comes back and say that I will not sell the property to you. Now you have vacated your premises. You have sold another property which you already have in order to purchase it. You've taken an EMI to do. Maybe you are in such a situation where you don't have an option B at all. Under that circumstance, you can file a suit for specific performance under Section 10 of the Specific Performance Act. It's again the discretion of the court. If the court feels monetary compensation is not adequate, just hold on for a while. If the monetary compensation is not adequate, if the person has to get this done in his favor in order to safeguard the justice and equity, then the court may grant the specific performance in your favor. Okay, at times they will say that no, you cannot cheat a person, you have to sell this property only to him. Or at times they'll say that it's okay, you already have another place, you're not standing on the street, I am just completely rejecting this application. It's absolutely the discretion of the judge. Okay. Next is your injunction. Injunction is where you are stopping a person from doing an act. That is called as injunction, or we call it as injunctive relief. Few things, maybe I'm staying in a particular home and another person, under the BBMP rules, we will have to give like 5 feet gap in between both the building construction so that both of us have a proper air and ventilation and lighting. All of these things are required. It is something regulated under the law. Now, suddenly I have given the space and have constructed. On the other side, the person is not leaving the property. He is directly constructing this particular building, which is adjoining mine, and it is disturbing my peaceful occupancy, my air and light ventilation. Under that circumstance, I can file a suit before the court saying that this is basically affecting me because air and ventilation is stopped. Second thing is that this person is not adhering to the local guidelines of a particular state. Hence, kindly give me an injunctive relief. The court shall grant or may grant an injunctive relief based on the facts and circumstances. If they feel it is important, they can just stop a person from constructing it, or they can re-instruct him saying that please demolish whatever you've constructed now, give 5 feet gap and now go ahead with the construction. So injunction is basically a mechanism to stop a person from what he is doing. That's why anytime you draft a confidentiality clause, I think I discussed in the earlier session, we always say that in the confidentiality, the remedy that's available under the law is injunction. If a person is spreading the confidential information and you are impacted or there is some sort of a business loss, you can say that this information is very confidential. He has to stop from doing this. That's an injunction. I don't know, of late, there are many celebrities where they immediately after their divorce, when they do not want their divorce matters to be out in the media, they go and take an injunctive order against all the press so that they do not publish their personal matters in the media. Most of the Kannada actors do that. So that's also another way when you feel that your privacy is very important, you can go ahead and take an injunctive relief. Basically stopping a person from doing what he is doing at this point in time or what he may do in near future. You're stopping a person. Next is damages. Damages is basically whenever a person has suffered any sort of a loss, you have to make some payment to him. That is called as damages. There are 5 different kinds to look at it. One is your compensatory damage. Any point in time, a person has some sort of an actual loss that has been suffered, you will make good of that particular loss when you can quantify that loss. Those are called as your general damages. I'm just traveling. I meet with an accident by which for 1 month, I cannot go to my employment. My salary is some X amount. That is quantifiable. That is my general damage. Now, what is special damage? Something on top of it, there is some loss. My salary is something quantifiable, but on top of it, maybe I got like 3 sessions from LawSeco, which is my additional source of income. I'm not able to handle it. Maybe there was a wedding that was fixed for me and I'm not able to take care of that particular stuff. I always get some rental income, which because of this, I'm not done. Or I'm a classical dancer. I can go and dance somewhere, which is again a source of income for me, which is lost at this point, which I may get. It's not I'm getting it. What I'm getting becomes my general damages. What I may get, the loss that I'm getting may happen, that becomes my special damages. Special damages, in order to claim, you have to always prove yourself before the court of law, and at the discretion, they can give it to you. Considering how many tentative days was booked in that particular month, how many like performances I've given in the earlier month, what is my reputation in the market, all of those things will be considered whenever I give a special damage. But whenever to honor a general damage, just the proof of my salary slip for that 1 month is sufficient enough so that it will be awarded. Next is your punitive damages. Punitive damages happens only when a person has undergone a grave agony, a mental agony or a pain. Especially in your intellectual property infringement or POSH cases, your punitive damages will be awarded. Because a girl, maybe due to the POSH or some sort of a sexual harassment, was a very good performer. Now, during that 90 days when the proceedings was going on, she was not in a position to give her best, due to which she is completely impacted. She went for some counseling for which she spent 10,000 rupees. Her productivity dipped. She was not in a position to, like, she was completely mum. She was in some corner of the home. Something really happened for her. For this 10,000 rupees, what she paid for the counselor, plus additionally, something can be awarded, basically for the stress and the pain that the person would have gone through. That is something called as punitive damages. It is not universally given in all sort of contracts, especially when a reputation of the person or a company is impacted, especially when an individual undergoes a lot of mental pain and stress, punitive damages would be given. Next is your nominal damage. Just to make a person know that he has made some sort of a mistake, some very nominal amount will be imposed as a penalty. The best example is recently, I think not recently, like 6 months back, Prashant Bhushan was asked to pay like 1 rupee as a damage for a wrong statement that he went ahead and made in front of media regarding the judiciary, the judges, and all of those things. The justification that was given by the Supreme Court judges is, we did not want to take some money. If people went ahead and said, you could have, he's such a rich person, you could have taken 10 lakhs, you could have given to Bar Association, it is pandemic, you could have used the money elsewhere. But the justification they gave us, we just wanted him to be thoughtful whenever he makes a statement. That 1 rupee is not to show him how much money he has, how much we want. It's not that. It's just to make him know that he has made a mistake and penalty is liable for his wrongful statements that he has done. You're not going by the quantity of the amount, but making a person know that he has breached his duty is where a nominal damages will be awarded at the discretion of the court again. Liquidated damages, very highly regulated under a contract, where parties mutually decide of what damages, to what extent it is recoverable. A good negotiation is up to 5x of the invoice value. If an invoice is 1,000 rupees, 5x is 5,000 rupees you can recover from the contract. That's a best negotiation. It may never happen also. Minimum is always say at least X value of the contract, at least 1,000 rupees I can recover. That is called as limitation of liability. A mid path is between 2x or 3x of the contract value. So it depends on the nature of the transaction and your negotiation. You will decide upon your limitation of damages. Basically, you're imposing some amount of a ceiling to recover the money. Good negotiation is 2 or X or 3x. Minimum is at least X value of the contract. Best is like 5x. Very hard to find it. Under few circumstances, the damages are always unlimited. In an event of breach of confidentiality, data privacy, death, bodily injury, rep and warranty, indemnification, under these circumstances, it is unlimited liability. So whenever you draft this limitation of liability clause, just say that in an event of indirect loss or damage, neither party is liable to it. In an event of breach of terms and conditions of the contract, the limitation of liability is 2x of the contract value. Under these circumstances, exceptions are in an event of confidentiality breach, data privacy, death, and bodily injury, the parties agree upon a unlimited liability. So that's how you draft a limitation of liability clause. That's one method. Another method is people go ahead and say that in an event of breach of terms and conditions, the value or the limitation of liability shall be 2x of the contract value, except death, bodily injury. Instead of having one separate clause as unlimited liability, in that LOL clause itself, have a word called except and give those 6 exceptions. Okay, so that's how it is being taken care of. Damages and terminations are taken care in the contract. Your rescission is not something universally taken, it's an option available. Specific performance is again a matter of right. Injunction is also again the discretion of the specific performance is the discretion of the court. Injunction, whenever you prove it, if the court has a substantial facts, they can go ahead and award that injunction, basically to stop a person from whatever he is doing. So these are the remedies that's available to you, especially in the common law system like India. We have all these remedies that's available. So my key takeaway for you is, in a contract, whenever you draft, mandatorily go ahead and have a termination for convenience clause with some notice period and stating that without any reason I can go ahead and terminate. Second thing, you will say termination for breach. Call out what are your material breach, something which is very substantial for a contract. Call out it is a material breach. You can immediately terminate. Then few circumstances under the law itself you will have to terminate. In case of insolvency, when a person, in case of a death of a person for that matter, like it is a contract which is related to an individual and a person dies on that particular date, there's a frustration of contract. Under those circumstances, you can immediately go ahead and terminate the contract. Another thing is your limitation of liability. Limitation of liability, limited, unlimited, clearly mentioned in your contract. So yes, this is what we had. It's 9:30. Any questions?
So, Nishwar, this was brilliant information, and I think we can begin the question and answers. If anybody has any questions, we can take them right now.
Yes. Help me. Yes. Tell me, Tarun.
Right, ma'am, you mentioned the injunction. So I've heard quite a few times that particular, basically, I'll introduce what I do. I'm in the real estate business. So I draft and execute transfer deeds, etc. for conveyance, basically.
Conveyance deed, yeah.
Yeah. So in certain cases, I've heard that there's a stay on a particular piece of property. So court stay. Does that mean that it's an injunction order?
It may be. So injunction can be temporary or permanent. If it is temporary, we call it as a stay order. Permanent, you cannot do anything. You cannot never do anything in that matter. So in case if it is a temporary injunction, then you have to go and, like how I told you, it's a very little construction. They may just say demolish that wall, reconstruct and go ahead and give me the new proof. So it's a temporary injunction. Permanent is the person is completely, I don't know if you're in Bangalore, there's one place, okay, or at least Bangaloreans, there's one construction which is happening by Nitish Estate right opposite to the golf. And like even I personally didn't know it. Just because the CM's resident is right diagonally opposite to that particular golf, none of those buildings can exceed 5 floors, okay? Because that's a mandate. From the 5th floor, if you just have a gun point, from directly it hits to the CM's house. Just for a security measure in that area, beyond 6 floors you can't do. Like 5 floors construction, then it's a terrace. You should just leave. So his house is not there. Nitish Estates unknowingly, they went ahead and, knowingly or unknowingly, I don't know, they went ahead and constructed 22 floors. And someone went ahead and filed an injunction suit. Now the complete building is stopped. No one, it's been like 3 years. They are not even permitting to demolish up to 5 floors, not they're completely asking you to demolish. Nothing is happening. It's in a prime location. So that's injunction. It's a permanent injunction now. Because you've breached, it's a security of a CM now.
There's a similar building right here in Noida. I live in Noida.
Okay.
So it's a superstructure, like it's residential cum commercial building constructed by a builder, Supertech. So they didn't follow the norms probably and didn't even pay the dues towards the authority as well. So they have decided to demolish the whole building. Yesterday only they just tested the, what do you call those, explosives. So
that residents are not impacted. Okay. Here it is like stop. Like it's from 3 years, it's in the same condition. Neither they demolish. I think they may not demolish also because that area is a very, what do you say, very high profile people stay in that. All the ministers stays in that road. I think they may never explode. Maybe they just keep the building as is. I think that's what they will take up.
They must be paying something under the table. Well, that's beside this point.
I don't know about it.
This building has also been stayed like this.
But I'll tell you the interesting story about this. Okay, when I was just reading, the person who filed this injunction suit right before the court, what exactly happened is this guy was a pedestrian. He was just walking, and the cement fell on him in the construction because they had covered it, but somehow that it was little open and the cement fell on him. Right. And this guy scolded the worker. The worker is like, hey, I am from this, and engineer also said he abused him, something happened to this pedestrian, all these things happened. Truly speaking, pedestrian was not even aware. he went ahead and just filed one complaint in the local BBMP office saying
Right.
that they're not following the norms because there should be a structured cover, because there's a beautiful at the golf road, right? There's a very good pedestrian walkway. Many walk there in the evening time, and it's a very calm place. And that whole 1 kilometer stretch, you don't have any mobile network for
Prime
security
location.
reasons. Yeah, prime location, so you don't have. So he went ahead and randomly filed it. He said they're not following the norms, and under RERA and all the things he went and filed. I think out of Josh he did. When the court ordered for the inspection, they realized it's 22 floors. The engineer who granted this plan, the BPMP people, everyone was suspended out of it. It's just one little cement made all of these stuff.
So many people got pulled in.
So many people got pulled in.
Right.
And he himself didn't know, like he was a celebrity for 1 week in all the news channels. And it's like, I truly didn't know. And I was laughing, like just simple stuff. But so many things are highlighted. And it's a residential come commercial. I don't know how many people went ahead and made the payments for this. I have no clue about it.
So many people invested when their dreams are broken now.
Yes.
Similar conditions here. Well, right. Aside from that injunction part, there was a limitation of liability clause.
Okay.
Right. So here we have a practice where a property is being agreement to sell. Basically, when that is executed, sometimes a clause is put in there that if the seller fails to sell the property to him for undisclosed reasons, then he has to refund the amount twice the amount of advance.
Very true.
And
it happens. It always happens in the transaction.
Yeah, and if the purchaser fails to purchase the property within the specified time, then his amount gets forfeited. So are these basically legal to put
Under
there?
the RERA, what is clearly called out in India is any point in time, first of all, any promotion activities when you do, you cannot take an interest more than 5%. Always the disbursement has to be matched up with the construction level that you are happening. Each time you have to submit a CA certificate, lawyer certificate, engineer certificate. Only then they will decide what is the amount that you can take, the quantum of the amount. All of those things are mentioned. Forfeiture part, RERA is silent about it. So hence people still go ahead and have it.
Forfeiture can happen basically, and it does happen in practice.
It has happened. But one thing is, in case if you are not finishing the complete structure in that due course of time, that deadline which you have given in RERA, right? Like I have to finish within that time. Under that time, if you fail to do it, 100% reimbursement, 100% refund should happen to the person who's paid the money. That's a new component to RERA.
Okay, that's new. Right,
Yes.
right. That's why builders are going insolvent suddenly. A lot of them.
Fine then.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Harshul.
Ma'am, hello, can I ask
Yeah,
a
tell
question?
me. Yes, tell me.
Ma'am, remedies is a separate clause altogether, or we can include it in breach of contract itself?
I would always suggest to have it separate. Under the limitation of liability itself, what I do in limitation of liability itself, after the end, I'll say that parties can recourse to all the available remedies under the law and equity. I just give that open line statement. I don't say injunction. I don't say stuff. I just say applicable law and equity. Whatever it is, it's available to me. That's it.
So limitation of liability is the clause for the remedies, basically.
You can have that there. Or
Even
what you do is, otherwise another option is when you do this confidentiality, there you can say that this particular clause should be having an unlimited liability and including but not limited to any appropriate remedy before the court, like injunction. You can even mention it there.
So limitation of liability, we can also include that damages and termination would be the probable remedies available.
No.
Right?
Termination is a standalone clause. Termination is always a separate clause. Limitation of liability is a separate clause. Like instead of telling recession, injunction and whatever, there you can just give this one statement. Any other remedy that's available under the law and equity. That's it.
So where will I mention that under the breach of contract, the contract will be terminated?
Termination itself is a separate
Okay,
clause.
okay.
No?
So
In
the
the term and
termination clause.
termination.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
term and termination. Term of the agreement is 1st January to 31st December. Termination for convenience, termination for breach. So in an event of breach, immediate termination,
Okay.
insolvency,
Yes,
blah, blah, blah. That's how it
I
is.
understand. Thank you.
Yeah, Vaibhav?
Hi, Nishvita. Hi.
Now don't ask me how to
I'm.
handle in China, how to handle there.
Oh, no. I troubled you that way. Don't worry.
No, that's okay. Tell me.
I'm pretty much near that building which would be demolished soon.
Yeah, okay.
And bombed
Where
down. Yeah.
Prestige
I'm
Upshot,
in
is it?
Noida too. Huh?
Oh, you're in Noida, you're talking
Oh,
about.
I'm
I
in
thought you were
Noida.
talking in Bangalore. Okay.
So that's one. My question was, why mention the remedies at all? Because they are available to you in law. Why
Yes.
mention them?
I mean, just to make the person know about it. Just saying that not only the contractual remedy, anything that's available under the law also, either parties can recourse. That's it. There's no harm. Even if you don't mention, the law of the land will protect your interest.
Right. And would that include the non-legal remedies too? I mean, arbitration and conciliation, that forms a separate clause otherwise.
Yes, arbitration you have to include.
Yeah,
Let go of it. Governing law and jurisdiction. Governing law is you have to pre-decide it in case if you want to see if both the parties are Indians, it's fine. You can just call out an Indian law. In case if it is a contract between two different nations, still which law is going to protect you? Jurisdiction, it would be very difficult to decide on a later date. By thumb rule, any country, you have to consider the cause of action.
Yeah, that
you
is
should have
clear.
a nexus. Yeah.
You've made that
So,
clear. You made that
correct. So if you do not know, then better take Mumbai court. So you know that Mumbai court is going to handle this particular matter. Just
Certainly.
avoid all these interpretations on a later date. Because once a relationship is strained, right, it makes no point to sit and think which law, which arbitrator, which governing law, which jurisdiction. Just have all of these things.
clear. Right. And another question.
Hmm.
How does it happen in China and the other countries?
See, I know that. I knew it's going to come back. Okay.
No. That not really. I'm satisfied.
Not really?
Pretty much. I'm
Okay.
done. Yeah.
No,
Thanks.
just letting you know about it. Specific performance is not a concept in China. There's nothing like you can force a person to do it because it's always a seller's prerogative there.
Right.
So injunction is definitely
So
there.
the comparative analysis of jurisdiction, probably you can dedicate a session. That's okay.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but that's okay. In Philippines, they have. Philippines,
I
as they have a part of common law system, all of these things are available.
I see. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes. I like that background. Is it real books for the wallpaper?
Oh yeah, they're real. Pretty 100 years old.
It's very nice. Very nice.
100 years old. Yeah.
Okay. It's very
Thanks.
nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Shubham.
You said the limitation of liability clause. We often get 2 or 3 times the value of the contract, or 5 times, whatever. How do we assert that value?
You don't
of the
assert.
contract?
You just say contract value. Contract value here means the invoice value. You take per annum whatever the invoice is going to be, like 1,000 into 12 months, 12,000 rupees. So 12,000 into 2 times, 24,000, the maximum liability of the person.
Okay. Not. Am I still
didn't get it?
not get? No. Is it the
One
total
second.
amount
You're
of
what?
the
You're a
business?
student? What are you?
Ma'am, I'm a lawyer, ma'am. Not a practicing one. I've been preparing for judiciary.
Okay. So, for example, whenever you have paid your college fees, okay? Now, when I say limitation of liability, in case in between, the college is not up to the mark and you are just stepping out of that college. Now, maximum liability of the college is to refund the fees that you've paid. Assume 30,000 is what you've paid. Maximum liabilities, they just refund that 30,000 back to you. That's it. So that 30,000 is the contract value.
Okay, I got it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Nishvita, Smita Mohan is asking if you can tell her what are the 6 exceptions in limitation of liability clause.
I'm just drafting it. I'll just type it so that everyone gets it.
Sure.
It's unlimited liability, okay, under these 6. Recession is basically when you are not interested to perform your obligation in an event the contract becomes unlawful or voidable in nature. You just go and file a petition before the court of law and you say the contract is cancelled. Officially, you're making this known to the entire world. That's called as rescission.
So, ma'am, rescission.
Okay, one second, Ajay, one second. Regarding the assignment getting 1 day extension and all, I am not the person. Please write to Priyanka. I just come.
No, don't worry. I just answered
Yeah,
him.
she's typed. No,
Yeah.
there's Kaljori who's typed it to me.
Yeah, if anybody wants an extension on the assignment, please write it to support, because even I am not the concerned person in this scenario. So your evaluators are different. So the support team will escalate it to them, and depending on whether your reason is really reasonable, they will consider whether to give you an extension or not.
Yeah, who was that? Ajay, no? Sorry, I had to
Yes.
cut you off in between. Yes, Ajay.
Sorry,
tell
Ajay.
me.
Ma'am, you said recession. Recession is you said like canceling the contract, right? So declaratory decree would be going to the court and asking for particular rights which the person has, right?
Correct.
Right. So recession connected with declaratory decree. So how does that happen? Like,
In both the circumstances, you're making the world let to know about it. Whether you're associated with something or you're not associated. That's it. You're using a legal mechanism for the world to know.
okay. So world is going to know that the agreement is getting cancelled. That's it.
That's it. At times, what
Oh.
happens in POA also, you go ahead and give a POA to a particular person. Now you do not know this POA holder was a culprit on that day, but now you get to know he's just fabricating the document, he's doing something. Now you just go and file a suit and say that this POA stands cancelled. And you go ahead and give a newspaper publication. Via this declaratory suit, this POA is cancelled, henceforth this person is not associated with me. That's it.
Okay, fine. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, Vishwas.
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I just wanted to ask that at this juncture, we are dealing with structuring a contract basically. And when I was reading IT Act, so what we usually did was we just went to the penalties chapter and we discussed whatever is there in the penalty chapter. And later on, we analyzed, okay, you don't do whatever is given in the penalty clauses, penalty chapters, rest you can do whatever you want. So likewise, when you come to contracts, I mean, that is just a strategy which I used to adopt. While drafting a contract, if I directly hit at the breaches clause and understand, okay, this is what we do not have to do, rest, whatever we want to do, we can do. And if by mistake we insert some clauses which are very meek, which shouldn't have been there, and there's another clause which might lead us to be in some kind of a prejudice. So, I mean, how do we deal with that situation where the other party wants to take leverage of our flaws in the contract, the breach clause? How do we deal with that?
See, first of all, a penalty and breach are two independent stuff.
Yeah.
Breach per se is available. You call it out, you don't call it out. Okay. Penalty is something on top of your breach, which has to be explicitly called out in the agreement.
Okay.
So now for breach, whenever there is a breach, for example, how I give you the event of default. A person has, like there is some national highway, the covenant. It was not expressed. Covenant is never expressed. There's a national highway, it is changed. This person is not told at all. That bank can take this contention. There was a covenant on him. It was implied on him, which he's not done. So there's a breach of covenant. This is a remedy. Now remedy is I want him to completely repay my loan. That's what I'm looking at. Remedy is available to you. You mention, you do not mention. But to get your termination and LOL, you have to clearly mention it. Okay. Now on penalty is basically, it's like, what do you say? It's the fine basically to make a person work in a proper manner. You like how when we used to go to college, we used to say, right, if you do not wear your shoes are not polished. This is what you can. You are like 100 rupees penalty will be thrown on you. Like, see, simple stuff. I am driving now. I have to wear a seat belt.
Okay.
No one is coming and telling me every time. Okay, it's something which is there. It's an obligation on me that I have to wear a seat belt. Now, when I do not wear it, it amounts to breach. Now, the remedy available on the breach is basically the police can even, whatever he wants, he can do. He can even arrest me. I'm just giving you hypothetical. He can arrest me. He can take control of my car, whatever he wants, he can do it. Penalty is something on top of it. That is where 500 rupees penalty will be slapped on me. It's again a discretion of a person. Penalty may or may not be imposed, but breach per se will happen, will be taken care of.
Okay. So penalty is a subset of breach.
Yes.
Okay.
And mutually decided.
Okay.
Unilaterally, a penalty can never be imposed. Before you impose any penalty, it has to be pre-decided between the parties. That's why we always say that please don't say a penalty at the discretion of the other party, because he can slap any penalty on you at that point.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, Prabhat. Prabhat.
Am I audible?
Yes, tell me.
Ma'am, there's a suggestion. Then next time, whenever you explain the stuff, you can please share with us at least 2 to 3 actual contracts. You can remove the names and specifications, because then it will help us to better visualize. So what I was doing is I got a contract to draft. I got a assignment. I had to draft a consultancy agreement. So the template I used as a reference point, it did not give much of help to me. Although it gave me a framework. But if we can have a look at actual contracts, then it can help us to better visualize things and frame things better. Otherwise, it would go.
Are you telling that we pull up consultancy agreement and show how a payment clause is? Is that what you're trying to suggest?
Not just in yes, ma'am. Not just in consultancy.
No, I'm just giving you an example. Yeah, like a lease deed. How is a penalty?
Yes,
how is a payment clause?
In different types of contracts, how these things are actually drafted, so that it will help us better visualize as to while drafting ourselves, we'll get a better idea as to what should we put in and in what type of contracts, what exactly how exactly should we put in.
I got it. But just to let you know about it, yes. As this is basically an international drafting course, all these things will be taken in your upcoming sessions when they do the cross-border transactions. For you at this point in time is to get clarity on these concepts. How an international contract, that's why I just gave one slide, like very high level information for you, how it will be drafted. That's it. When the next experts to come for the respective, like Canada, wherever the jurisdiction is, that point in time, they will pick up the contract examples and tell how in Canada this will be done. How is it in US? How is it different? That's where they will focus.
Ma'am, this can be done even these contracts also. Whenever you explain, at least if we get to see an actual contract, then we'll better able to understand as to, you see in suppose in technology transfer agreement, how a particular clause is drafted. In lease agreement, how a particular clause is drafted. So we'll get an idea as to how things vary from contract to contract and what all should we keep in mind if in future, anytime in future we come across such contract.
Fine, because currently we're just focusing on clauses like a general stuff. I'll consider this. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Maybe we'll plan to have one session of something like that. Let me think how to do it better. Fine. Because if taking up like 2-3 different agreements will be different ways. Let me see what can be done there.
Because I was just drafting one cross-border consultancy agreement. And I took a reference from what we've been given in the LMS portal, the template. First of all, I find there's some errors there. So, and I wasn't, since it was a bare contract, so I was not able to actually understand as to what should I put in. So again, I asked for one of my friends' help. So he was working in a firm. So he gave me another draft. But then there were things entirely different. So again, I had to figure out as to what should I put in, what should I not. So that became very, very.
That's how drafting happens. Drafting is never like this is a perfect draft. Drafting is always an art. It varies from person to person. The simplest clause can be the most rigorous clause for another person to have it. That's how drafting is. But yes, let's see what can be done.
Ma'am, there's one thing with respect to payment clauses. let's suppose this is a consultancy agreement, and the person that is supposed that I am a company, and the other person who is residing in US, he's supposed to give us sales. He is supposed to give us business. So the party that I'm representing, that I'm drafting contract for, they said that they'll pay him as soon as he raises the invoice. What I suggested them, that the moment the salesperson, that is the consultant, he gets you the business and the amount gets into my account, that is the client's account. At that particular date, we'll start counting dates. That is from that particular, then when the money comes in my account, and from that day we'll calculate a period of 15 to 30 days wherein we'll make the payment. So should
You've made it milestone payment.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
From a client standpoint, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Instead of making the dates, you've made it milestone so that there's a lot of pressure on the other person to perform well.
But they are suggesting that they should keep it that way, that whenever he raises their invoice.
But
So
that's a challenge, no? See, he will raise an invoice. Like for 30 days, he wouldn't have even got one business.
Yes, ma'am,
immediately 30 days is done, he will go and raise the invoice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The other
So
client would be jeopardized.
yes, ma'am. So this would be better that as soon as he gets the sale and the amount gets credited into my account, from that day onwards, within a period of 15 or 30 days, I'll credit the payment to the consultant.
It's a milestone. It's a good negotiation. But I don't think so consultant will agree. So what you can do is, you can, like, this is how a negotiation works. Usually in the very initial days, it takes some time for him to understand the business and go ahead and represent this particular client in front of the different venues where he can get the prospective business. So you can give that buffer of like 15 days or 20 days, like a cooling period for him. Like in first 15 days, it's okay. Like we will give you some time to onboard and stuffs like that, because you have to think about a consultant's interest also. Definitely, you can't just say at your cost you do it. If not, you say that for that 15 days, whatever the out-of-pocket expense you would have incurred, pay that, submit those bills to us. We will look into it and we will pay the fair value of it. So that it is a win-win situation for the consultant and the business. For both, it's a win-win situation, and consultant also will be happy. Then you make it like a milestone payment, saying that in the first 3 months, you should bring at least one business of so much value. In the period of next 6 months, another business of so much value. And the moment the amount is credited to us, you do it. So make it like a fixed and the milestone. That's the negotiation. First, float your milestone. If a consultant agrees, it's very good deal for you. If he come back, this is the second option.
And on this one more thing, I was attending one of those lectures wherein it was telling about MOUs. So since this is a person, he doesn't, the consultant that we are talking, so he's not a very established person. He's currently unemployed. So according to
where?
Is not employed anywhere. So
Employed, okay.
That's why. So from the brief that I've received from my client, he says that we don't want to scare him away for the first time. So what I've got is that he doesn't hold much of bargaining power. So what I was thinking is, first we get into an MOU with him for the first 6 months, see how he performs. And if we find his work to be good enough to onboard him, then we can get into a consultancy agreement, because the client is emphasizing on getting to a consultancy agreement from the moment go.
Do it. Do an NDA. My suggestion is do an NDA. Let him kickstart the work, followed by do a consultancy agreement. See, always having an agreement will give a better edge for you to negotiate with him. Plus, for him also, there will be a lot of satisfaction to work with you. Never a contract should be like a one-time assignment. You should think it from a futuristic perspective, how long he wants to associate yourself. Once there is some somewhat of an assurance, imagine you will say, I'll give you 6 months MOU. It will not give him so much of flexibility to work. His mind will always be wondering for someone else also where he can work. Instead, make a consultancy experiment which is exclusive in nature. During a period of first 6 months, he will not work with any other competitor. He will not work with anyone else. Make it an exclusive, because now anyways he has a less negotiation power. He will agree for all these clauses.
All right. That would be good. So it's better that we get into a consultancy agreement straight away. So
Please
consultancy agreement and independent contractor agreement are one and the same thing, right?
Slightly different. We use the term contractor for unskilled labor. We use the word consultant when it comes to a professional course. That's
Even
it.
if that person is only getting us business, because
That's
it's
okay.
not.
Call him as a consultant. That's absolutely fine. It's just a better way. But end of the day, in consultants also, you will have one statement saying he's an independent contractor. There's no employer-employee relationship, JV transaction partnership that's been created. We are not liable for any of his misrepresentations that he's done during the course of discharging his duties.
Ma'am, in the expenses clause, there's one thing that we'll, apart from these, the commission that they'll pay him, and they'll bear the expenses related to boarding, lodging, and food and travel. So apart from that, what all bills can be reasonable if we put it?
You say all out-of-pocket expenses. Maybe stationery. Okay. Stationery can be there. Your boarding, lodging can be there. At times, what happens? Not getting a bill is a problem. For example, you would have used I don't know where is this person. Maybe you would have used a auto rickshaw, right? You will not get a bill. So how we usually do is we will say all out-of-pocket expenses up to the value of 5,000 rupees. Wherever the bill is possible, give some amount up to 2,000 rupees. Without bill, we will settle it. But you have to tell where, how did you use it. About 2,000 rupees, you take a prior approval and only then you incur. Now you say all boarding, lodging, I'll give. He will go and stay in all 7-star hotels.
Exactly,
You will bear it.
Exactly.
So take prior approvals.
How I drafted in case he wants to bear any expenses, he wants to take expenses. So he has to take a prior approval from the director of sales.
Prior written approval.
All right.
Making a statement prior written and approval has a lot of difference. Approval can be even on calls. Say prior written approval.
Prior written. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, Vishwas.
Ma'am, there was an accounting firm which was managing accounts for an international client, and on termination they said that our dues are 12 lakhs for example, and when they asked for their dues, the party said that first you pay us 50 lakhs. So what clause in the contract can counter such situations?
Like you are payable what, only 42 lakhs?
No, basically what I gathered was they wanted, our dues were actually 12 lakhs, but when we asked them to settle our dues, they told us you owe us 50 lakh because of your incapacities, because of your lacunas, we have suffered a loss.
Nothing in the air can be spoken. Did he prove something substantial against you?
No.
Then that's okay.
The problem was that they had agreed in that particular agreement that the applicable laws for of that particular country, that international country, would be applicable. So that okay?
But any country for that matter, the principle of natural justice has to be followed. The law and equity per se is applicable everywhere. So something in the air you can't do. Either it should be a general damage or a special damage. In case of special damage, it has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt from that person. General damage is fine. See, you had to come to me and you didn't come, for which I incurred 5,000 rupees. Something general, because of which I incurred 50 lakhs rupees, let him prove.
So, that the accounting firm, that person was very, he was very confused about it. So we asked him to, okay, let things go.
Let things go in the sense, pay, is it?
No, don't pay. Why should he pay? Basically, we told him that because we are asking him 12 lakhs, so he's asking us 50 lakhs. So he wants us to let go our 12 lakhs.
Not a fair deal. Get into negotiations. Ask him under which clause, what are you asking for? What was that something which we have misappropriated or whatever you have incurred a loss? So under which breach is it? Is it falling under material breach residuary? Did we even agree upon something else? Why there was no highlight all this while? Why on detailing? First of all these things can happen only when you do the detailed review of the contract.
Yes,
just because a governing law is some country, you need not fear about it. Because per se in every common law country, unjust enrichment is clearly highlighted. At my expense, someone else can take a benefit out of it.
Sure, ma'am. See, okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. See, another reason why we usually don't take contract specific is this is how it works, because every contract, right, needs a different way of interpretation. A thumb rule cannot happen for all the contracts. That's one of the challenges.
Yeah. So I think we've covered everything, and I think Nishrita, you've answered I think, all of the questions. So let us move on to the exercise. And so I would require all of you to just say a yes if you have some patience to discuss the feedback of the last session on representations and warranties.
Okay, before that, is the concept clear? First of all, let us get clarity on that. Obligation, payment, breach, remedy. Just go back and recheck on the PPT because it's too much of content. Okay, I understand you may be confused. That's what I said. You may be confused in between. Just go back and listen to the recording or just quickly brush through the PPT. That's more than enough. Are you all fundamentally got these topics right? Yes or no? At least just that. Yeah. Okay. Apart from Mithun, no one else, is it? Yeah, fine then. You can go ahead with the exercise then.
Okay, great. So I will share.
I just wanted to tell that please share the PPT also. Please do
Yeah,
share.
definitely. The PPT will be uploaded and I will also make sure that it is shared on the Discord group. So
Thank
you
you.
will have access to it. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the exercise. And Nishvita, if you want, you can retire. I don't mind.
Okay, fine then.
Yeah.
I'll take your leave. Bye
Sure.
then, all of you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nishvita. But others, please stay with me. It will just take 10 to 15 minutes, not more. I'll try to put just compile it in 10 minutes. Let's just go through the exercise and okay, share screen. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so in today's exercise, so the learning objective is how to frame obligations and payment for different types of transactions, drafting obligations and payment clause, and understanding what is typical for obligations and payment clauses in cross-border transactions. So your first exercise is about a company which is an LLC, which is a software company in California. And they want to hire a consultant, a paralegal consultant on a remote basis, whose name is Munna Bhai. I'm sure all of you are going to love it. So it will be a consultancy contract and not an employment contract. So here we have to understand the difference a little bit. It means that he won't be on the payroll of this company and he will have to provide invoices on a monthly basis or any interval that is decided between the parties. And so on behalf of ABC, you have to list out the obligations that you would like the paralegal consultant to undertake. Okay, so you can be as specific as possible. In the next part, you have to draft an obligation of the consultant clause for the above agreement. So the obligation can be anything. You can expect the obligation which will determine the purpose of this contract. It can be anything. It is up to you. And the third point is that obligations clauses may not necessarily be titled as obligations. Okay, you can title it as assignments, you can title it as deliverables. Be creative and draft it accordingly. So, and identify at least 5 obligations of the PBL Entertainment, the borrower. So here you have a syndicated loan agreement, okay, and from this you have to list 5 obligations. Okay, just identify and list them down. That's as simple as that. And so basically the third question does not have much of a reference to the ABC LLP. Then moving on to the second exercise, it is on framing payment mechanisms and drafting payment clauses. Just a second, I will open I didn't receive this. Okay, you haven't received this assignment in your portal yet. I know it will be uploaded by tonight or maximum tomorrow. Don't worry about it. So the second exercise is on framing payment mechanisms and drafting payment clauses. There's this man, Muffin Man, a popular, it's not a man, it's a company, a breakfast chain in UK. It's looking to establish a liaison office in India to look for possible franchisees. For this purpose, it is looking to lease a small office in Parel area of Mumbai. The name of the company behind the chain is Breakfast Delicacies PLC, BDPLC. It is looking to lease the office in Biscop Towers, which is owned by Biscop Holdings. Now, you have to write down what you would expect from BDPLC in terms of payments as a lawyer. And is there anything specific that you can think of pertaining to payment mechanisms, because this is a cross-border transactions. Now, when you are writing about this, it is not necessarily that you write it in a language of, you don't have to use legal language when you are talking about terms of payments. Just imagine that you are doing client counseling and draft it accordingly. Then draft a payments clause for this transaction and how it is connected with the obligations clause. So you know how to establish the relation, right? A specific performance and consideration. That is how you will go about it in the B section. The second question pertaining to exercise 2 is that PQR Softwares, which is a UK-based software company, develops games and other accounting softwares for Windows and Macs and other operating systems, and wishes to develop mobile games applications for Android and OS platforms. Now, they have approached ABC for a collaboration. Okay. So, now understand that ABC is your LLC, which we discussed in the first exercise. Just keep in mind the facts that we have listed about ABC. So now for collaboration, they want to avail the expertise of ABC in mobile application for their software development. And they have agreed upon the following terms: that PQR should bear the cost of food and accommodation of employees and whatever, you can read it. So ABC should change the software fees as per the following milestones. Okay, 25% of the project cost at the time of signing and collaboration of the agreement, 30% at the time of passing quality assurance, and 30% at the time of deployment and handover of the software, and 15% at the time of handing over the user manuals and process. So draft a payments mechanism clause, keeping everything in mind. So you can frame that, just you can don't copy paste it, but then take these points as a reference and draft your payments clause. As your reference material, you can go to advanced contract drafting and use module 2 and how to draft obligations and payment clause in any contract. You can also refer to the slides of this class that we will be sharing with you shortly. Okay, and do you have, okay, you can't access advanced contract drafting course, but don't worry, I will get this module uploaded on your LMS portal, so don't worry about that. Then what we will do is, if you guys have little bit of patience, let us please quickly discuss this. What do you say? The feedback of representations and warranties. Are you guys ready? Please say yes. I will finish it in 5 minutes, just as I discussed the exercise very quickly. Please say yes if you're ready.
I'm still not completed the assignment, ma'am. So please wait.
Okay. How many of you have not completed your assignments?
We'll do it by 11, I guess. Then.
Okay, all those who have not done your assignments, just type me so that I will get a head count, and so I can decide whether to go ahead with the feedback. Okay.
I did not attend that
sorry
class.
to interrupt you. Just,
sorry?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Basically, there has been 2 assignments and I've submitted both. But how can we get like evaluation of the same, like where we gone wrong?
Right. So when you upload your assignment on your assignment portal, the evaluator will evaluate your assignments and they will also share their comments telling you where they have gone wrong. So today I was going to do the feedback session in short as to tell you what was expected exactly. So, you can even do some self-assessments, but don't worry, what I can do is tonight or maximum tomorrow, you guys can complete your assignment. And by the end of this week or before the end of this week, I will upload another video. That will not be a session. It will just be a video which will appear on your LMS portal pertaining to the feedback for representations and warranties class. Yes, Ashish Mundari.
I just wanted to say, ma'am, for the first assignment, no such review class was done for assignment 1, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so let me check into it. So I have just joined last week. Let me check into it. If there is no feedback session or if there is no video uploaded on the first class, I will do that as well, so that you will have.
Assignment was duly evaluated and there were certain submissions written on it, but no such video was provided.
Okay, no
That's right.
problem.
I completely agree with Ashish. And the same happened with me also. For the first
So there was
assignment,
no
we didn't get
feedback
any.
also done.
And one more
Okay.
thing also, ma'am, they said they will be providing a you can say like a perfect answer, I guess, and I'm not able to. Yeah, for that, all the
Okay.
assignments, even that
Okay,
was
so
not
I'll tell you
providing a
what.
sample answer
Okay, no problem. I'll tell you what.
after
So
submitting.
I will look into it if there's no vid. So the video will give you an idea about what the perfect answer should be. Okay. I don't think there will be a document, a written document, which will provide the perfect answer. But definitely the video will be comprehensive enough so as to give you an idea about what to write, what was expected and what not to write. So let me look into it, and I will prepare a video if it hasn't been prepared yet. And also for representations and warranties, I will do the same. So
Hello,
yes,
ma'am. I have a query related to representation and warranty assignment.
tell me.
I'm confused between the subsequent clause and completion clause. Like there was a point related to incentive that this company shall pay some incentive if the purchase or if the sale goes above $5 million. So will it
Right.
come under subsequent clause or the completion clause?
Okay, it will come under the subsequent clause. Now let me tell you why. So basically, when we are talking about the completion clause, there's the final milestone. Okay, that is the point where the performance of the contract has been executed completely, right? And when they are saying that there's a milestone that when the turnover of the company reaches this XYZ milestone, there will be a payment to the tune of this nature. That will come under the subsequent clause, because still partially the performance of this agreement, which is the main purpose of this agreement, hasn't been completed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, ma'am. And this completion clause, one more thing I have to ask. This
Right.
completion clause, like the subsequent and the completion clause, it starts after the agreement has been signed and like everything starts. And the
Definitely.
precedence is like condition precedence is like the before parties have signed the contract.
Yes, yes. So, okay, let's understand this. Okay, when we are talking about conditions precedent, now let's say you attend IBL boot camp, okay, and Ramanuj is telling you, we will offer you this, we will offer you that, XYZ. But he also says that there are certain conditions if you want to enroll in this course. That is not the fact. Okay, this is just an example of the record. So he says that you have to be enrolled in your third year at least of your LLB or BSL, whatever course that you're pursuing. That is the condition precedent. Now, before you pay for the course and before you can access the course, LawSeco will check your documents as to whether you are already enrolled in the third year or or not. That is the condition precedent, which is checked before entering into a contract, but it has to be stipulated in the contract, because like you have recitals for every contract which mention the background of every the nature of the agreement, right? So conditions precedent are of similar nature to that of recitals, where certain things have already been established and checked.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Shubham, you have a question?
Yes, I have missed my class on representation warranty.
I'm
Still,
not
I
able
have.
to hear you. Could you
Am
please?
I audible enough now?
Yeah. Tell me.
So I have missed my class on representation and warranty.
I
Still,
have
I
lost you
went
again. I
ahead.
cannot hear you again.
Am I audible enough now?
Yes. Okay.
So I missed my class on representation and warranty. Still, I went through the recording and I have completed my assignment.
But
Okay.
there's one query which I had. I wanted to ask Nishmita ma'am, but we already ran out of time.
No
So
problem. You can
this
ask.
was this completion clause. I have heard condition subsequent and condition precedent, but nothing of this sort. This came in between. What is it? On
Nothing.
completion, complete. This is no completion. Condition completion clause.
Yeah. Okay.
This I
So,
am not familiar with.
okay. Okay. Let us say, okay. Now I just explained to you in the context of loss echo what can be a condition precedent, right? Now I will tell you something more. For example, when you talk about condition subsequent, we can say that if you complete your writing assignments, for example, we will publish them on iPleaders. That can be an example of condition subsequent. Like, you know, as you start as you initiate your performance, there will be another like both the parties will perform something, like you know, you will get some consideration for certain type of performance, right? Now, when we are talking about condition of completion, there's, for example, all of you have this condition of completion from LOSICO. You complete, I think it's 40% of your assignments, right? 40% of your, I don't know, weekly assignments, right? I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
Okay, let us consider if you complete 40% of your weekly assignments, 20% of your written assignments, and if you are making 100% of your payment for the course, LOSICO will issue you a certificate of course completion. That is conditions of completion, right? Where after LOSICO has dispatched your certificate, your contract will be over, right? It has which means that your contract has concluded.
Okay, that's I guess a fulfillment of the purpose, right?
Yes, fulfillment of the purpose. Perfect.
Okay, ma'am. But I have completed my assignment, leaving it because I could not understand anything.
Don't worry.
So
Don't worry. Now you
I'll
can
submit it or probably get it edited.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Ashish, do you have a question? You have raised your hand.
Yeah, ma'am, if I have any query regarding this session that I have to ask on Discord in queries and all.
You can ask right now or you can ask on Discord as you wish.
Ma'am, I will watch it again, ma'am.
No problem. Go through the video again. And if you have any queries,
Please
just
provide the PDF, ma'am. That's all.
yes, definitely. Definitely.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Shashank, you have not received your study material yet. So are you expecting a hard copy of the study material? I think Shashank has left the meeting and there's no, he's there. Shashank, could you please unmute
Yes,
yourself?
ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Could you please write to support@losico.in because they will be solving this query.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you
Great.
so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I will stop recording.